Hold her down. Vanessa Carter's voice was calm, almost bored, as she issued the order. The next thing I knew, 2 strong hands grabbed my arms and pinned me to the dining table. I struggled. I kicked, twisted, screamed, but it was useless. Nathan, my own brother, was the one holding me down, and my mother, my father, they just watched. No one tried to stop her, no one cared, because to them, I was nothing. "You should have learned your place, Emma," Vanessa sneered. Then she stabbed me in the eye with a fork. Pain. Blinding, unbearable pain. I felt the metal tines sink into my eye socket, tearing through flesh, burrowing deep. A scream ripped from my throat, but it only made them laugh. They were enjoying this. "That's what you get for touching my son," Vanessa spat. Her perfectly manicured nails dug into my scalp as she twisted the fork deeper, wrenching another agonized cry from my lips. The pain was so overwhelming I barely noticed the warm, sticky liquid running down my face. Blood. My blood. "Enough," my father finally said. Vanessa let go. Nathan released my arms. I collapsed onto the table, gasping for breath, my body shaking violently. And then I felt them, their eyes, all of them staring at me. Not with concern, not with guilt, just disgust. "Look at the mess she made," my mother muttered, wrinkling her nose. "Take her outside," Nathan said flatly. And just like that, I was discarded like trash. The servants dragged me out of the house, barely giving me time to stand. Blood poured down my face, soaking my clothes, my vision nothing but a blur of red and black. The mansion door slammed shut behind me. No goodbye, no hesitation. They hadn't thrown me out to teach me a lesson. They had thrown me out to die. I stumbled forward, one hand clutching my ruined eye, the other reaching out blindly. Everything hurt. Every step. My body was shutting down, my mind was screaming, but no one was coming to help me. And then, a loud screech, the blinding glare of headlights, and then, impact. Dying isn't as dramatic as people think. There's no grand revelation, no life flashing before your eyes, just pain. Then darkness, and then nothing. When I opened my eyes, I was somewhere else, a bed, soft sheets, the distant sound of birds chirping outside a window. At first I thought I had survived, that maybe, somehow, I had been rushed to a hospital, that there was still a chance. But then I saw it, the mirror across the room, and the face staring back at me. No blood, no scars, 2 eyes, both of them. I sat up so fast my head spun, my hands flying to my face. I touched my left eye. It was fine, completely untouched. And that's when I saw the date on my phone. 4 years ago. I was 4 years in the past, right before it all went wrong, right before Vanessa ruined my life. Right before I sacrificed myself for a family that never cared if I lived or died. A slow, twisted smile curled on my lips. I had been given a second chance. And this time, I wasn't going to be their victim. I was going to make them suffer. I had spent my entire past life sacrificing for people who never deserved it. I bled for them. I suffered for them. And where did that get me? Stabbed, abandoned, and left to die. But now I had a second chance. And the first person who would suffer would be Vanessa Carter. The memories of my previous life came back in flashes, sharp, brutal, undeniable. One stood out above all the others, the restaurant incident. It had been the moment everything changed. The moment that sealed my fate as the Carter family's scapegoat. In my past life, we had gone to a high-end restaurant to celebrate my father's birthday. And that's when Jake, my spoiled, arrogant 5-year-old nephew, decided to cause trouble. He had run around the table, ignored the waitstaff's warnings, and knocked over a pot of boiling soup. And like the fool I was back then, I jumped in to save him. I took the full force of the scalding liquid, my skin melting from the burns, my body shaking from the pain. I couldn't work. I couldn't function. I was a burned, useless burden. And the Carters never let me forget it. If you hadn't been so careless, you wouldn't have gotten hurt. Vanessa is already dealing with so much. Do you have to make everything about you? Jake is just a child, Emma. Stop blaming him. They turned my sacrifice into my fault. But this time, I wasn't saving anyone. The moment I saw Vanessa pull out her phone to take a picture of the food, I knew it was happening exactly as before. Jake was already squirming in his chair, his darting toward the steaming hot pot on the table. A waitress passed by with another tray of soup. Jake stood on his chair, reaching for something. And I did nothing. Not a word, not a warning, not a single move to stop what was about to happen. And then, crash! The scalding soup tipped over. Screams erupted through the restaurant. Jake let out a piercing, blood-curdling wail as the boiling liquid splashed over his face and chest. Vanessa shot up from her seat, her expression twisting from shock to rage. "Jake!" she shrieked, grabbing him, frantically checking his burned skin. The restaurant fell into chaos. Waiters rushed forward, napkins and ice packs in hand, desperately trying to help. Vanessa, however, wasn't interested in the truth. She was already looking for someone to blame, and of course she turned to me. You let this happen." Vanessa's voice cracked with fury as she pointed a trembling finger at me. I blinked at her. Completely calm. "How exactly did I do that?" Her eyes blazed. "You should have stopped him. You were right there." I tilted my head. "You mean you were right there?" Her face twitched. "You're his aunt. You should have grabbed him." "And you're his mother." The words were sharp, lethal. Her expression darkened, her breath hitching in her throat. Around us, people were watching. Other diners, the restaurant staff, the manager, and most importantly, there were security cameras. The restaurant manager stepped forward, looking tense. "Ma'am," he said, addressing Vanessa carefully, "we have security footage of the incident. If you'd like to see—" "No need," Vanessa snapped. "I saw what happened. It was—" "Actually," I cut in smoothly, my voice soft but firm, "I think we should watch the footage." Vanessa froze, because she knew. She knew what it would show. She knew it would prove Jake was misbehaving. She wasn't paying attention. I did absolutely nothing. Nathan, my brother, stepped in, looking irritated. "Just show the footage," he muttered. Vanessa went pale. Minutes later, the footage was played on a small tablet, and everything was clear. Vanessa watched in horrified silence as the screen displayed exactly what had happened, and just like that, her accusations crumbled into dust. The restaurant took no responsibility for the accident, and neither did I. Vanessa had no choice but to rush Jake to the hospital, her face flushed with humiliation as she stormed out. Nathan followed after her, angry and frustrated. My mother tried to berate me, but I simply turned my back and walked away. None of it mattered, because this was only the beginning. Vanessa had humiliated herself, but that was nothing compared to what I had just discovered. Because as I sat back down at the table, casually sipping my drink, I overheard something that made my blood run cold. A whispered conversation between two waitresses near the bar. "That little boy's blood type doesn't match his dad's." "What? Are you sure?" "Yeah, the hospital check-in desk asked about it. The dad is O negative, but the kid is AB. No way they're related." I froze. Jake wasn't Nathan's son. Vanessa had cheated. She had lied. And now I had the perfect weapon to destroy her life. A slow, cold smile spread across my lips. This was only the first taste of revenge. And I was just getting started. Secrets are like cracks in glass. At first, they're small, unnoticeable, but with the right amount of pressure, they spread. They shatter everything. And today, I was going to shatter Vanessa Carter's entire world. The hospital waiting room was a mess of panic and chaos. Jake's screams had finally died down, thanks to heavy doses of painkillers, but Vanessa was still shaking with rage. Not because her son was suffering, because she had been humiliated. Because for the first time, she couldn't blame me. I sat in the corner, perfectly calm, watching as Nathan spoke with the doctor. "We need a full checkup," my brother said, voice tight, "and make sure there's no long-term damage." The doctor nodded. "We'll need to run some tests, including a blood analysis to check for infections or complications." I leaned forward slightly, my lips curving into the faintest smile. A blood test. Perfect. I didn't have to do anything at all. The truth would reveal itself. 15 minutes later, the doctor returned, and I knew, the moment I saw his hesitant expression, that everything was falling into place. "Mr. Carter, there's something unusual in the results," Nathan frowned. "What do you mean?" The doctor glanced at Vanessa, uncomfortable. "Are you certain that Jake is your biological son?" The room froze. Vanessa went rigid. Nathan blinked. "What the hell kind of question is that?" "Because, sir," the doctor hesitated, then continued, "Jake's blood type is AB, but according to his medical records, yours is O negative. It's genetically impossible for you to be his father." Silence. Thick, suffocating silence. Then, "What?" Nathan's voice exploded through the room. Vanessa staggered backward, her face draining of all color. "That's ridiculous," she stammered, but her voice was already breaking. She knew she was caught. And the best part, I hadn't said a single word. The next day, the Carter mansion turned into a war zone. I sat in the living room sipping coffee as Vanessa screamed like a madwoman. "Nathan, please," she sobbed. But Nathan was beyond furious. "Don't fucking talk to me," he roared. He threw a suitcase at her feet. "Get your sheet and get out." Vanessa collapsed to the floor, clutching at his legs, but Nathan shoved her off like she was nothing. "You cheated on me," he spat. "You lied to me. You let me raise a kid that wasn't even mine." "I didn't know. I swear Nathan grabbed her by the wrist, hauling her to her feet. "Shut up," he hissed. "You make me sick." And then, in front of our entire household staff, our mother and me, Nathan threw Vanessa out of the house. She landed on her hands and knees, trembling, her makeup a smeared mess. The moment was perfect. But I wasn't done yet, because Vanessa Carter wasn't just going to lose her husband, she was going to lose everything. By nightfall, every socialite in our city knew the truth. I made sure of it. I attended an exclusive charity gala, standing in the middle of a group of high-profile women, all sipping champagne and gossiping. I didn't even have to lie. I just let out a soft sigh and whispered, "It's just so tragic. Nathan is completely devastated. Imagine finding out that the son you've loved for 5 years isn't even yours." Gasps, eyes widening in shock, and then the wildfire spread. By the next morning, headlines were everywhere. Scandal, Vanessa Carter exposed as a cheater. Nathan Carter's shocking divorce, illegitimate son revealed. Betrayal in high society, the Carter family's biggest scandal yet. Vanessa had officially become a disgrace, and the best part, there was no way for her to recover from it. Our mother, Margaret Carter, was a master manipulator, and when she realized Vanessa was beyond saving, she tried to turn the situation to her advantage. "Emma, listen to me," she said, sitting across from me at breakfast. "The restaurant where Jake got burned, we can still sue them." I arched an eyebrow. "Sue them?" Margaret smiled coldly. "They should have had better safety regulations. We can get a huge settlement, of course." Even after all this, all she cared about was money. I set my coffee down, meeting her gaze with mock concern. "That's a great idea, Mom, but won't the security footage prove that Jake was the one who caused the accident?" Margaret's smile vanished. "What?" I sighed dramatically. "Oh, you didn't know? The restaurant has cameras. The footage clearly shows Jake knocking over the soup. The court would throw out the case immediately." Her face twisted in frustration. She had nothing left to argue. Vanessa was gone, Nathan was broken, and the Carter family's last attempt at gaining anything from this disaster had failed. I stood up, brushing non-existent dust off my dress. "It's over, Mother," I said softly. "Stop trying to win, you've already lost." She said nothing, because she knew I was right. For years, Vanessa had played the perfect wife. For years, Nathan had been her blind, devoted husband. For years, Margaret had controlled everything from the shadows. But now, it was all gone. And I had done it without lifting a single finger. They had destroyed themselves. And I simply sat back and enjoyed the show. A slow, satisfied smile spread across my lips. One down, more to go. I once thought revenge had to be loud, that it had to be violent, explosive, a war fought with blood and fire. But I was wrong. The best kind of revenge is the one where they destroy themselves. And Vanessa Carter? She was about to learn that the hard way. A week had passed since Vanessa was thrown out of the Carter mansion. She had no money, no friends, no powerful last-minute savior to pull her back into high society. But Vanessa was a survivor. And when you take away everything from a desperate woman, she'll do anything to crawl back, even if it means burning down everyone else with her. And so, she turned to the only thing she had left: social media. Vanessa started with a single post, a carefully staged selfie, her face makeup-free, her eyes red as if she had been crying. The caption, "I gave them everything, and they threw me away like I was nothing." It was calculated. She knew exactly what kind of reaction she wanted, and it worked. Within hours, the comments were flooding in. What happened? You don't deserve this, girl. Stay strong. Was it Nathan? Did he cheat? She didn't respond immediately. No. She let the speculation build. She fed the mystery. And then, the bomb dropped. A 20-minute live stream. With fake tears running down her face, Vanessa told her version of the story. How Nathan was a cold, heartless husband. How the Carter family was abusive and manipulative. How she was a faithful, devoted wife until she was framed and thrown out like garbage. It was bullshit. But the internet? The internet loves a good villain story, and within hours, justice for Vanessa was trending. People chose sides. Vanessa's followers attacked the Carter family, demanding answers, but she made one fatal mistake. She underestimated Nathan's rage. Nathan had always been an arrogant bastard. A control freak who cared more about his image than anything else. And when he saw Vanessa's live stream, he snapped. That same night, he went live. No PR team, no carefully written statement, just raw, unfiltered rage. You want the truth? He sneered into the camera. Then he dropped the evidence. Screenshots of Vanessa's text messages with her secret lover, hotel receipts showing her weekly visits to a 5-star suite paid for with his credit card. The paternity test proving Jake was not his son. You played yourself, Vanessa. His voice was cold, unforgiving. You wanted to make me look like the villain? Fine, but now the whole world knows what you really are. And just like that, Vanessa Carter was finished. The hate came fast, brutal, relentless. She's a liar? This woman had a whole affair and is crying about being abused? Meow. I almost felt bad for her. What a scammer. Her followers abandoned her. Brands that had sponsored her lifestyle cut ties immediately. And the best part? She had no way to fight back, because the receipts didn't lie. Vanessa became a joke overnight, a pathetic meme circulating on every social platform. And the Carter name? Dragged through the mud with her, which was exactly what I wanted. I sat back, sipping my coffee, watching as my phone screen filled with headline after headline. Nathan Carter exposes cheating wife. Internet reacts. Vanessa Carter, from socialite to scandal overnight. The Carter family drama unfolds. High society is shaken. They had humiliated me my entire life. They had called me useless, pathetic, disposable. Now they were the ones being laughed at. And I was untouchable. Our mother, Margaret Carter, had spent decades controlling this family. But this was too big to fix. Her golden son, Nathan, was a public embarrassment. Her once perfect daughter-in-law, Vanessa, was a scandalized disgrace. And me, the daughter she always underestimated, I was walking away from it all. Emma, she called after me as I stepped out of the house, my bags already packed. I paused. You can't just leave, she said, her voice tight with desperation. I turned to her, completely unimpressed. Watch me. Her face twisted. You think you're better than us now? No, I said simply. I've always been better than you. You're just too stupid to see it. She flinched like I had slapped her, and then, without another word, I walked away. For the first time in my life, I was free. Desperation makes people dangerous. When a person has nothing left to lose, they'll do things they never imagined. Things that cross the line from cruel to unforgivable. And Vanessa Carter? She was about to commit the worst betrayal of all. After the scandal, Vanessa lost everything. Her money, her reputation, her place in high society. No more luxury boutiques, no more private chefs, no more Carter wealth to support her. She was homeless, broke, alone, and she was angry. But Vanessa Carter wasn't the kind of woman to accept defeat. She had one last asset left. Jake. The son she had lied about for years. The son she had used to manipulate Nathan. And now, she was going to sell him like a piece of property. I didn't have to spy on Vanessa to know what she was planning. I had spent my entire past life watching her scheme and manipulate. I knew exactly how her mind worked. So when I saw her standing outside a rundown motel, nervously checking her phone, I already knew. She was waiting, and a few minutes later, he arrived. Jake's real father. A man I had never met before, but whose existence had just destroyed the Carter family. He was tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a sleek black suit that screamed power and danger. This wasn't some random one-night stand. This was a man with money, and Vanessa was about to cash in. I watched from the shadows as she shoved a stack of papers into his hands. Her voice was low, desperate. Take him. Full custody. I don't care about visitation. I just need the money. A cold, amused chuckle. You're really selling your own kid? Vanessa's jaw clenched. I don't have a choice. He smirked, flipping through the paperwork. You always have a choice, sweetheart. You're just choosing yourself over him. She said nothing, because they both knew he was right, and just like that, she signed away her son's life for a check. Jake was gone forever. The moment Nathan and Margaret found out, the reaction was exactly what I expected. Pure chaos. Nathan stormed into the mansion, his face twisted with fury. Where the hell is my son? Margaret, still recovering from her public humiliation, grabbed her phone. Call the police. We need to. It's too late. My voice was calm. I leaned against the staircase, sipping my tea, watching them panic. Nathan turned on me, eyes wild. What do you mean it's too late? I sighed. I mean, Vanessa had full custody. She made a legal decision. And now, Jake is gone. Margaret's face went pale. No, this can't be happening, she cried. But it was, and the best part, they had no one to blame but themselves. Nathan tried everything. He called lawyers, he tried to challenge the custody agreement, but it was useless. Jake was with his biological father now, and legally, Nathan had no rights to him. Then, as if things couldn't get worse, the authorities stepped in. A caseworker from Child Protective Services showed up at the Carter mansion. We received reports of potential child abuse and neglect, she said coolly. Margaret stiffened. That's ridiculous. We are a respected family. The woman cut her off. We have reason to believe that a minor under your care was subjected to both emotional and physical harm. We need to ask some questions. Nathan's face drained of color. Margaret gripped the back of a chair, her nails digging into the fabric. They knew what was coming. Because the truth was... Jake wasn't the only victim in this house. I had been too. And now, their sins were finally catching up to them. The investigation moved fast. Within a week, CPS had dug up everything. Nathan's violent temper, Margaret's history of neglect and manipulation, multiple reports from former maids and nannies who had seen it all. The Carter family's dirty secrets they had hidden for years, were now public record. They had spent their lives looking down on others, acting as if they were better than everyone else. Now they were just another case file in the system. I stood outside the mansion gates, watching as Nathan stormed away from the house, reporters shoving microphones in his face. Nathan Carter, is it true you've lost custody of your son? How do you respond to the allegations of abuse in your household? His face was red with fury, but he couldn't escape the cameras. Margaret was nowhere to be seen. Hiding inside, probably realizing for the first time that her reign was over. And Vanessa? Vanessa was gone. She had taken her money and vanished, leaving the Carter family to drown in the mess she created. And I had won. I took a slow, deep breath. the first breath of true freedom I had ever felt. This family had tried to destroy me. Now, they were the ones who had destroyed themselves. And the best part, I hadn't even needed to lift a finger. Some people break quietly, they fade into obscurity, too defeated to fight back. But others go down kicking and screaming, clawing at anything they can still control. And the Carter family? They were about to tear each other apart. Nathan had always been arrogant, entitled, untouchable. Now he was nothing. His business partners cut ties overnight, unwilling to associate with a man whose name was splashed across every headline. Nathan Carter exposed fake father, abusive husband, lying CEO. CPS investigates the Carter family, shocking allegations revealed. Vanessa Carter's betrayal, the scandal that destroyed a dynasty. No company wanted him. No investors trusted him. No one respected him anymore. And worst of all, he had lost his son. Nathan had spent 5 years raising Jake, believing he was his legacy, his heir. Now, he was just a reminder of Vanessa's betrayal. And without his son, without his money, without his power, Nathan Carter was a dead man walking. Our mother, Margaret Carter, had spent her entire life controlling people. But now she had no one left to control. No wealthy husband to fund her extravagant lifestyle. No obedient son to manipulate. No grandson to parade around as the future of the Carter empire. And worst of all, she had no money. The mansion had already been seized as collateral for Nathan's mounting debts. Creditors lined up, demanding payment she couldn't afford. And the so-called friends who once surrounded her at every social event, they didn't even return her calls. For the first time in her life, Margaret Carter was powerless, and she was drowning in it. If there was one person who refused to go down quietly, it was Vanessa. She had been humiliated, ruined, cast out of high society. But unlike Nathan and Margaret, she was still dangerous, because desperate women don't think rationally. And Vanessa was past the point of no return. It happened in the ruins of the Carter mansion. Nathan was sitting at the grand dining table, the same table where he had watched Vanessa stab me in the eye years ago, his hands buried in his hair. Margaret stood by the window, chain-smoking, her fingers shaking too much to hold the cigarette properly. The house was empty, silent, except for the sound of the storm outside. Then, a knock on the door. Slow, measured. Nathan didn't move. Margaret frowned, stepping toward the entrance. When she opened the door, she gasped, because standing there, soaking wet from the rain, her eyes wild with rage and madness, was Vanessa. And she was holding a knife. "You did this to me!" Vanessa shrieked, lunging forward. Nathan barely had time to react before she swung the blade at him. He stumbled back, grabbing a chair to shield himself, but Vanessa was out of control. Margaret screamed, backing away as Vanessa slashed at everything in sight, the furniture, the curtains, the walls, until the blade finally found flesh. Nathan roared in pain as the knife sliced across his arm, blood splattering onto the pristine white carpet. But Vanessa wasn't done. She turned toward Margaret next. "You ruined my life, you manipulative old witch!" she spat, raising the knife again. And that's when the siren started. Police cars flooded the front yard, flashing red and blue lights through the shattered windows. The front door burst open, officers storming in. "Drop the knife!" Vanessa froze. For a split second, she hesitated. Then, with a hysterical laugh, she let the knife clatter to the ground, and as they dragged her away in handcuffs, she didn't scream, she didn't cry. She just looked at Nathan and Margaret and said, "You deserve this." And then she was gone. Vanessa was sentenced to 15 years in prison for attempted murder. Nathan, now jobless, broke and injured, became a ghost of himself. Margaret? She faded into irrelevance, forced to live in a tiny, run-down apartment, surviving off the last remnants of her stolen wealth. And me? I stood on the hill overlooking the mansion as the police cars drove away, the storm finally settling. This family had spent years destroying me. Now they had destroyed themselves, and the best part? I hadn't even needed to lift a finger. I turned away, walking toward my car. For the first time in my life, I had no chains holding me back. I had won, and they would never rise again. The Carter name had once been untouchable. It commanded fear, respect, and power. But now it was nothing more than a curse, a stain on the world, and soon it would disappear completely. After Vanessa's arrest, Nathan was a wreck. His business empire was gone. His son had been taken from him. His reputation was beyond repair, and worst of all, he had nothing left to fight for. I saw him once, 2 weeks after the attack. He was sitting on a park bench, staring blankly ahead, his clothes disheveled, his eyes hollow. He didn't even recognize me when I walked past him. Nathan Carter, the man who once ruled over our family with arrogance and cruelty, was now just another lost soul in the world. And then, one morning, I woke up to the news. Breaking news. Nathan Carter found dead after jumping from hospital roof. I clicked the article. After suffering a severe mental breakdown, Nathan was admitted to a psychiatric hospital. He became unresponsive to treatment. Last night, he climbed to the rooftop and jumped, dead on impact, and just like that, the golden son of the Carter family was gone. And I felt nothing. Margaret Carter had spent her entire life controlling others. She had built her power through manipulation, through influence, through her ability to bend people to her will. But with Nathan gone, Vanessa in prison, and the Carter empire in ruins, there was nothing left to control. I visited her once, months later, not because I cared, just because I wanted to see what was left of her. I found her in a nursing home, sitting in a chair by the window, staring into space. She didn't even notice me. Her once sharp, calculating eyes were dull. Her mouth moved slightly, whispering words to no one. She was alive, but she was already gone. I stood there for a moment, watching the woman who had ruined my life. The woman who had once ruled over me, made me feel worthless, abandoned me to die. Now she was a hollow shell. I leaned down, my voice cold as I whispered, "This is what you deserve." She didn't even blink. I walked out without looking back, because Margaret Carter was dead long before she stopped breathing. The last ghost of my past was Jake, the child I had once burned myself for, the child I had sacrificed everything for, only to be abandoned in return. After Vanessa's arrest, Jake had been sent to live with his biological father, and I had thought that would be the last time I ever heard of him. But then a few months later I received a phone call. "Miss Carter, we regret to inform you." I barely listened to the rest, because I already knew. Jake was dead. His biological father had been an abusive drunk, a man with a history of violence. And Jake, a child who had once been spoiled, arrogant, untouchable, had been completely powerless in the hands of a monster. At first I waited for the grief, the sorrow, the pain of losing the boy I had once given my life for. But as I sat there staring at the wall, waiting for my emotions to rise, I realized something. I felt nothing. Because Jake Carter had died a long time ago, not when his father killed him, not when he was taken away, but the day he stood by and let his mother and grandmother throw me away like trash. And I was done mourning for people who never mourned for me. By the end of the year, the once powerful Carter family no longer existed. Nathan was dead. Margaret was lost in her own madness. Vanessa was locked away, forgotten. Jake was buried in a grave no one visited. The Carter dynasty had burned to the ground. And I had survived it. No, I had won. For the first time in my life, I was truly free. I stepped outside, breathing in the cold night air, feeling the weight of my past finally lift. They were gone, and I would never think of them again. I turned and walked away, and I never looked back. I had won. The Carter family was gone. Nathan, dead. Margaret, a hollow shell. Vanessa, rotting in prison. Jake, buried in a grave no one visited. For years I had dreamed of this moment, the day they would finally pay for everything they did to me. But as I stood at the edge of my victory, staring at the ruins of the family that had once controlled my life, I felt nothing. No joy, no satisfaction. Just a single haunting question. What was it all for? I sat alone in my penthouse, staring out at the city skyline. The lights stretched for miles, glowing against the night, full of life and movement. It was beautiful. And yet I felt completely numb. I had spent years suffering under the Carters, years being their punching bag, their servant, their disposable trash, and now I had taken everything from them. I had burned them down until nothing remained. So why? Why did it feel like nothing had changed? I poured myself a drink, swirling the amber liquid in my glass. As I lifted it to my lips, my reflection in the window caught my eye. I frowned, because for the first time I wondered, who am I now? I had spent so long chasing revenge, so long plotting and destroying, that I never stopped to think about what would come after. And now that I had finally won, all I could think was, did I become as cruel as they were? I had let Jake die without feeling a thing. I had watched Nathan break and done nothing to stop him from falling further. I had whispered my last words to Margaret, knowing she wouldn't even understand them, knowing she had already lost her mind. And I had enjoyed it. I had enjoyed watching them suffer, just like they had enjoyed making me suffer. I had turned their own cruelty against them, giving them exactly what they deserved. But now I wasn't sure if I was any better than them. I leaned back, exhaling slowly. Had I fought for justice, or had I simply let my own darkness consume me? At the beginning, it had been about righting a wrong. It had been about making them answer for what they had done to me. But somewhere along the way, I had stopped caring about justice. I had wanted to see them suffer. I had wanted them to beg, to break, to fall apart in front of me. I had wanted them to feel every ounce of pain they had inflicted on me, and more. I finished my drink in one slow sip, my throat burning. Did I go too far? I murmured to myself. There was no answer, because deep down I already knew the truth. For years, my life had been about them. Every step I took, every decision I made, all of it had been for revenge. Now they were gone. So what was left for me? I had no family, no real friends, just an empire built on the ashes of those who wronged me. Was that really a life? Or just another kind of prison? For the first time, I realized something terrifying. I had spent so much time looking back that I had no idea how to move forward. I stood up, walking to the window, pressing my palm against the cold glass. For the first time in years, I had no enemies left to fight, and without them, I wasn't sure who I was anymore. I had won, but at what cost? And more importantly, was I truly free? There was a time when I would have given anything to see Margaret Carter on her knees, to watch her break, to see the fear in her eyes as she finally understood what it meant to be powerless. And now that moment had finally come. But as she knelt before me, trembling, crying, begging, I felt nothing. It happened on a rainy afternoon. I had just returned from a meeting, my world now one of wealth and success. A world that I had built for myself, without the Carter name weighing me down. The storm was heavy, wind whipping through the streets, when I stepped out of my car and saw her. Margaret Carter. She was standing outside my building, her coat soaked through, her frail body shivering from the cold. The woman who had once stood above me, looking down with disdain and cruelty, was now barely recognizable. Thin, exhausted, broken. And the moment she saw me, she fell to her knees. "Emma, please." Her voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. She looked up at me, eyes wide with desperation, hands clutching at my coat as if I were her last hope. "I have nowhere to go. I have nothing left." I stared down at her, my face completely blank. "And what does that have to do with me?" Her lips quivered, a sob breaking from her throat. "I was wrong, Emma. I was wrong about everything. Please, I need your help." Help. The same woman who had let me bleed out on the streets was now asking me for help. The same woman who had watched as her son and daughter-in-law destroyed me, who had stood by as I was abandoned, humiliated, and left for dead. Now she wanted my kindness, my forgiveness. I could have laughed, but I didn't. Because in that moment, I realized something. She wasn't worth it. I crouched down so we were at eye level, Her breath hitched, hope flickering in her eyes like a dying flame. "You want my help?" I murmured. She nodded frantically. "Then get on your knees and beg for it." She was already on the ground, but the words still hit like a slap. Her face twisted, her pride warring with her desperation. Margaret Carter had never bowed to anyone in her life. She had made others kneel for her, had crushed them under her heel. But now she had no power left to hold on to. And so, she lowered her head to the pavement. She knelt. The storm howled around us, rain pounding against the concrete. People walking by stared, whispering among themselves. A once powerful woman, now reduced to nothing. It was the ultimate humiliation. It was the final revenge. And yet, it wasn't satisfying at all. I didn't feel the triumph I had imagined. There was no joy in watching her suffer. There was only emptiness, because she was already dead inside. There was nothing left to destroy. I straightened up, shaking off her grip. "Get up." My voice was cold, distant. She looked at me, confused, as if she didn't understand. "I said get up," I repeated, my eyes sharp. "I'm not going to help you. I'm not going to destroy you. I'm done with you." Her face collapsed in horror. "Emma, please." But I was already turning away, and for the first time, I didn't look back. As I walked into the building, something inside me shifted. For years, my life had been defined by revenge, by my hatred, by my anger. But now, it was over. Margaret Carter would live the rest of her days as a forgotten woman, alone, desperate, a ghost in a world that no longer cared she existed. And me? I had nothing left to prove. The Carter name was gone, and I was finally free. For the first time in my life, I was free. No more enemies, no more ghosts from my past, no more Carter family to pull me back into the darkness. I had spent years clawing my way out of hell, fighting for revenge, for justice. But now that I had finally won, I realized I wanted something more. I wanted a future, a life that wasn't built on hatred, a life that wasn't about them, but about me. The Carter family was gone. Nathan, dead. Margaret, lost in her own madness. Vanessa, rotting in prison. Jake, buried in an unmarked grave. Their empire had crumbled into dust, their once powerful name now a stain on history. And I had walked away from it all, untouched, untouchable. Because unlike them, I had survived. I stood on the balcony of my new home, a penthouse overlooking the city, far away from the mansion where I had once been nothing more than a discarded shadow. The air was crisp, cool, clean. For the first time, I wasn't looking over my shoulder. For the first time, I wasn't thinking about who I had to fight next. There was no next battle, no next enemy, only possibilities. I could go anywhere, do anything, because for the first time, my life belonged to me, not to my past, not to my revenge, but to me. I took one last look at the city below, exhaling slowly, and then I let it all go. The pain, the hatred, the scars they had left on me. The Carter family was nothing more than a closed chapter in my story. And now, I was finally ready to turn the page. With a small, knowing smile, I stepped back inside, into my future, into my new beginning. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe so you don't miss any future content.